Good morning. Welcome to WASA Distance Education Center and PLAR Geography. Okay, so we're into the last class of, not last class, last week of Term 1A. So this is week 9. And you will notice that there will be some classes that will be rescheduled. We didn't have classes yesterday during the day. The night classes were scheduled as usual. So today, for Wednesday, this was supposed to be the PLAR English, but Bonnie's traveling, so I have taken her spot for the PLAR Geography, and then tomorrow I will still have my PLAR Geography for the usual schedule. But as I mentioned, there'll be other classes that will be rescheduled for the next 2 days. So just make sure that you are aware of that. Next week will be admin week. So that's the week of November 3rd to the 7th. No classes. So if you have any courses that you need to have completed, make sure you're in contact with your teacher to make sure that you are able to complete them, or if you're needing any help. We will also do our end of term draws for students who submit work during each term. So we will be doing the Term 1A draw. So if you submit work, your name will get in there, and same thing when you earn a credit. Okay, we're going to look at the topics we will be looking at for this morning. We have quite a bit of material to cover. We did ecozones from our last class on Thursday last week. We looked at marine ecozones and terrestrial ecozones. Today we will look at environment on page 30, Paris Agreement on page 31, global warming on pages 32 to 35. Then we will look at pollution, water and land pollution, water's conservation, and types of renewable and non-renewable resources. Learning goals, so keep this in mind. I can explain the significance of climate change and its effects on humans and the environment. And then our last topic for tomorrow's class is I can use longitude and latitude to locate places on a map. We got as far as key question 24 on Thursday. This was the ecozones key question 24. Let me just bring that up here for you. Oops. So this is the one that we did on Thursday. And again, this is different from the one that I had sent previously in previous years. Instead of you selecting 1 marine and 3 land ecozones, I've chosen them for you. So remember, when you're doing this question, the name of the ecozone is already given, so that's the region that you are studying. So for example, boreal shield is an ecozone. Landforms, that's the shape or type of land in that area. So for example, rocky hills, forests, lakes, and so on. Climate, the kind of weather the area usually has. An example might have cold winters, it might have warm summers. Animal life, that's just the types of animals that live there. So when you're doing your key question for that, you don't have to write down every single animal that's given. So if it has different types of bears, you don't have to write every single type. Human interference or activities, that's just how people use or change the land. So for example, logging, mining, it could be tourism. So those are just some examples. So we did one on Thursday. So boreal cordillera was one of the ones that was given to you. So that's a terrestrial ecozone. Landform, we said mountains, valleys, lowlands. Climate, winters were long and cold, summers were short and warm. Animal life, we put down moose, mountain goat, squirrels, birds. And then human interference, We have forestry, tourism, exploration, and canoeing. So that's all you have to do. You don't have to pick the ecozone yourself. I have written down which ecozones for you to complete. Okay, and we said that ecozones is a large region where the land, plants, animals, and people are connected by similar natural features and climate. Canada's ecozones are large regions that show how the environment and human activity interact. So we saw that from doing key question 24. Each ecozone has its own climate, its own landforms, plants, animals, and ways people use the land. So we have 15 land ecozones and 5 marine ecozones. So marine is water-based, like the Arctic and Pacific. These ecozones show how different Canada's environments are. So you can see from the cold tundra in the north to the rainforests and grasslands in other parts of the country. Okay, if you're following along in your book, you can turn to page 30. And the heading for that is environment. So the environment includes everything that's on, in, and around Earth, and it has 4 main parts. So the atmosphere, or the air, hydrosphere, that's water, lithosphere, that's the Earth's crust, and biosphere, living things, so it could be plants, animals, people. So humans impact the atmosphere by releasing carbon dioxide from burning fossil fuels and driving cars. So this gas traps heat, which causes global warming, which can seriously affect the environment. Okay, still on page 30, the Kyoto Protocol, that was in 1977. So what is it? That was an international agreement made in Kyoto, Japan, and this was to fight climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Their main goal was to lower the amount of harmful gases like carbon dioxide and methane, which causes global warming. Who had to follow it? Well, developed countries promised to cut their emissions because they had contributed more to pollution. And how could they do it? Countries could reduce emissions. However, some countries, like the United States, they didn't agree with the plan because they thought it would be hard to follow. And since the US produces the most greenhouse gases, other countries like Japan said the agreement would be hard to support without US involvement. So you can see on the graph here on the bottom of the screen, it was signed by 160 nations. US and Australia have not ratified the agreement. Okay, that means they didn't sign. So you can see USA emissions in 1990 in millions of CO2 equivalent tons and reduction commitments to 2012. So in red, that's the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2012. So for the States, 6,049. For European Union, 4,208. Russia, 3,040. Japan, 1,213. Canada, 612. And Australia, 423. So you can see that this is what the US needs to reduce by, and they thought that it would be hard to follow, so they didn't sign the agreement at the time. So Japan was key into making the Kyoto Treaty official. The treaty needs approval from countries responsible for 55% of industrial greenhouse gases in 1990. And like I said, since the US didn't join, Japan's approval is necessary to reach this goal. In December 2011, Canada became the first country to leave the Kyoto Protocol. Canada left because it was supposed to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions, but instead Instead of reducing it, emissions had gone up. So staying in the agreement would have meant paying big fines. The government also said it didn't make sense to stay since major polluters like China and the US weren't part of the deal. So what came after the Kyoto Protocol? Well, the Kyoto Protocol led to other agreements, like the Paris Agreement in 2015, where 195 more countries joined the effort to fight climate change. Under this agreement, each country promises to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions and adopt cleaner ways of producing energy. So the goal is to prevent the Earth from getting too hot and to protect the planet for future generations. Now, although the agreement began in 2015, 2020 was the target year for countries to start updating their climate plans. So you can see here, these are the top 10 CO2 emitters worldwide and the status of the Paris Agreement. China is at the top. They have ratified the agreement. Ratified just means they have officially approved or confirmed. It's 28.03%. USA have also ratified the agreement at 15.90%. India 5.81%. Let's see where Canada is, 1.67. So you had a total of 97 of 193 signatories that have ratified the treaty. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says that to reach a world with net zero emissions by 2050, countries need to start reducing greenhouse gas emissions right away. Canada has set an even higher goal. They were aiming to cut emissions by 40 to 45% below 2005 levels by 2030. Okay, turn to page 31. On page 32. The heading on top of page 32 says global warming. So regarding global warming, we have the following information that's the commonly asked questions about this topic. For example, the first question is, what does the greenhouse effect have to do with global warming? Well, the greenhouse effect is a natural process that keeps the Earth warm enough for life. The sun's energy heats the Earth's surface and atmosphere, and as this heat tries to escape into space, some of it is trapped by gases like carbon dioxide and methane, and this acts like a blanket around the planet, so it's keeping in the heat. Without the greenhouse effect, Earth would be much colder and unable to support life. Now, global warming happens when more of these heat-trapping gases build up in the atmosphere, and that causes the Earth's temperature to rise. So you can see here. So you have sunlight passing through the atmosphere, and it warms the Earth. Then infrared radiation is given off by Earth. Now, most of it escapes to outer space, allowing the Earth to cool, but some infrared radiation is trapped by gases in the air, including CO2, which is carbon dioxide, keeping the Earth warm enough to sustain life. However, when you have enhanced greenhouse effect, that means increasing levels of carbon dioxide, increase the amount of heat retained, which causes the atmosphere and Earth's surface to heat up. So what is causing it? What is causing global warming? Well, scientists have found that human activities are causing global warming by adding a lot of heat-trapping gases to the atmosphere. And the biggest source of these gases is our use of fossil fuels. When we drive cars, use electricity from coal, power plants, or heat our homes with oil or natural gas, we release carbon dioxide and other gases that trap heat. Another major cause of greenhouse gases is cutting down forests, especially in tropical areas, and changing how we use the land. So since the time before industries develop, the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has gone up by 31%. During the same time, methane levels in the atmosphere have increased by 151%, and that's mainly because of farming activities like growing rice and raising cattle. Okay, when we talk about methane, methane is an element, is a colorless, odorless gas that is a powerful greenhouse gas. So as the amount of these gases increases, more heats get trapped in the atmosphere and then less escapes into space. This affects the climate and leads to changes in weather patterns, so we'll get heavier rain, longer dry periods, and stronger storms. So I don't know if you remember this when this happened in Sioux Lookout. This was CBC posted this June 24th, 2021. You can see the roof of a Sioux Lookout hotel was partly blown off during a storm that happened that Wednesday. So roof damage, trees and power lines felled by the windstorms from storm that hit Sioux Lookout. Okay, so the weather patterns changes, and you get extreme precipitation or heat. Another question, is global warming already happening? The answer to that is yes. The IPCC, or the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, said in its third assessment report that more and more observations show a clear picture of a warming world and other changes in climate. So some of the changes they have already noticed that support this view include the Earth's average temperature went up slightly during the 20th century. Snow cover and sea ice have decreased, and mountain glaciers have been shrinking, especially in the second half of the 20th century. Sea levels have risen, and ocean temperatures have also gone up. There has likely been more rainfall in the middle and higher latitudes of the northern hemisphere and in tropical areas, and some regions are experiencing more frequent extreme rainfall events. So there's also examples of observed physical and ecological changes. For example, permafrost, which means frozen ground, is thawing. The growing season is getting longer in middle and high latitude areas. Plants and animals are moving towards the poles or to higher ground. Some plant and animal species are declining. Trees are flowering earlier in the year. Insects are emerging earlier in the spring, and birds are laying their eggs earlier than before. Okay, here's a picture of the early spring 2023. You can see flower blooming, showing climate change impact. Okay, another question. How much warmer is the Earth likely to become? According to the IPCC, if no major steps are taken to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, the Earth's average temperature is expected to rise significantly between 1990 and 2100. So this increase is larger than what scientists predicted in 1995, mainly because they now believe that tiny particles in the air called aerosols don't cool the Earth as much as they once thought. So scientists believe even if we stopped all greenhouse gas emissions today, the climate wouldn't stabilize for decades because the gases already in the air can stay for a long time. Cutting emissions can slow warming, but temperatures won't quickly go back to today's levels. So the faster the Earth warms, the higher the risk of permanent climate changes. So on the bottom of the slide here, you can see the human influence on the greenhouse effect. So on the left-hand side, that is the natural greenhouse effect. So some heat from the sun stays in the atmosphere and some escapes into space. This keeps Earth warm enough for life. But on the right-hand side, where it says greenhouse effect intensified by humans, it shows that humans add more greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, CH4, methane, and nitrogen to the air. This traps more heat, so less escapes into space, making the Earth warmer than it should be. So would a temperature rise of a couple degrees really change the global climate? Well, even a small increase in global temperature can have a big impact. So over the past 10,000 years, the Earth's average temperature has stayed very steady, changing only slightly. At the end of the last ice age, the world was just a little cooler than it is now. But that was enough to cover the northeastern US with over 3,000 feet of ice. So scientists predict that if global warming continues and temperatures rise over the next 100 years, it could lead to serious changes, including sea levels could rise enough that it would cause more coastal erosion, increase flooding during storms, and even permanently flood some low-lying areas. Significant stress on many forests, wetlands, mountain regions, and other natural ecosystems. Increased threats to human health as mosquitoes and other insects and rodents that carry diseases spread to larger areas. And farming could be affected in some areas due to heat, water shortages, and flooding in low-lying regions. Okay, so you can see here how does temperature increase affects insect pests. Well, they would increase in number of generations. They would expand geographic range, so where they wouldn't be in just one area. They would expand, so going from different places. Outbreak of plant diseases transmitted by insects. Increased overwintering survival. So even though it's winter time, because of the temperature increase, they would still be around. Desynchronization of insects and their natural enemies, and loss of synchrony with the host plant. Next question, is global warming connected to the hole in the ozone layer? Well, global warming and ozone depletion are two different but connected issues. So global warming and the greenhouse effect refer to the warming of the lower part of the atmosphere, called troposphere, caused by an increase in heat-trapping gases. So on the other hand, the ozone hole refers to the loss of ozone in the upper part of the atmosphere, known as the stratosphere. So this is a serious concern because stratospheric ozone protects us by blocking harmful ultraviolet or UV radiation from the sun, which can be damaging to plants, animals, and humans. So you can see that. Think of it as an umbrella that covers us. So if there's holes on your umbrella, that means all of that harmful ultraviolet radiation will be getting through. So in humans, a depleted ozone layer would likely mean higher rates of skin cancer, cataracts, and immune system problem. Okay, so is there anything we can do about global warming? Okay, let's just... And the answer is yes. So the most important thing we can do to slow global warming is to reduce the emissions of heat-trapping gases. So governments, individuals, and businesses can all contribute to this effort. So for governments, they can take several actions to lower greenhouse gas emissions, including increasing energy efficiency standards. For example, energy efficient light bulbs. Government can set energy efficiency standards that require light bulbs to use less electricity while providing the same amount of light. For example, switching from incandescent bulbs to LED bulbs reduces the amount of energy used, and lowers greenhouse gas emissions associated with power generation. They can also encourage the use of renewable energy sources like wind and solar power, removing subsidies that make coal and oil cheaper, which encourages their use, protecting and restoring forests, which are crucial for storing carbon. So forests are important because they act like carbon sinks, which means they absorb carbon dioxide, a heat-trapping gas, from the atmosphere. Trees take in carbon dioxide during photosynthesis and store it in their trunks, branches, leaves, and roots. So if you have the standing forest, you can see all the trees there, okay, it's absorbing the CO2. However, if you cleared or degraded forests, now you're releasing CO2. Is there anything we can do about global warming? So the previous slide there is what the government can do or what others can do. For us, driving less and using cars that are more fuel efficient. And produce less pollution. Choosing energy efficient appliances. Insulating our homes to keep them warm in the winter and cool in the summer, and using less electricity overall. So for example, using LED light bulbs, turning off your electronics when you're not using them, programmable thermostats, sealing windows and doors, and washing with cold water. For businesses can improve efficiency and save a lot of money by doing the same things, but on a larger scale. Utility companies can save money by not having to build costly new power plants if they encourage and assist their customers in adopting energy-saving practices. Okay, let's try some key questions. Key question 25, A to B and D, and then key question, A and B, and then D, and then we'll do 26. Okay, key question 25. A, what does global warming mean? So it's just specifically asking you what that means. So global warming means, you tell me what it is. And why should we be concerned about its effect on the Earth? Okay, so basically it's just asking you, after you define what global warming is, why should we be concerned about it? How does it affect the Earth? So we should be concerned. You tell me why. Okay, the next part of key question 25 is define the following terms. So tell me what it is. Ozone layer. So write down what it means. Paris Agreement. Okay, skip C because we haven't done C yet. So do ozone layer, then Paris Agreement. Key question 26. In your opinion, was it a good idea for Canada to withdraw from the Kyoto Accord? So in 2 or 3 sentences, explain why or why not. So remember the Kyoto Protocol, we had countries that were looking into cutting back emissions. Okay, Canada withdrew from it. So in your opinion, so you say either yes, I think it was a good idea, or you can say no, I don't think. Okay, it was a good idea, but you have to explain why or why not. Why do you think that it was a good idea, and why is it you don't think it was a good idea? Okay, key question 27. List 3 actions you personally, that means you, not the government and not what businesses, like in your book it mentions what businesses can do and governments should do. I just want you to list 3 actions that you personally can take to help reduce global warming. So for example, I might say, okay, I turn off the lights. Okay, when I leave the room. Okay, so it's just what you can do personally. Okay, let's continue. Our next topic is how do people upset the balance of the environment? Okay, so an environment is always changing, and sometimes these changes help keep everything in balance. So when the environment is balanced, the size of the population stays fairly stable over time. Sometimes the balance in an environment gets disrupted, so often people cause this imbalance by destroying the habitats of other living things. So habitat just means, where the animals live. For instance, they cut down forests to make room for farms and towns, build dams, and dig mines. So these activities can harm other organisms in the environment. As a result, many animal species are struggling to survive because of the way humans have disrupted nature's balance. Okay, the next term that we're looking at on, let's see, page, if you're following along in your book, we're now on page 36. People disrupt the balance of nature by causing pollution. So that's a term. Pollution is a big problem that harms the environment, and that happens when harmful substances called pollutants are released into nature. Okay, so anything that harms the environment is pollution. So the 3 main types of pollution under air, land, and water. Many different substances are poisoning our environment and upsetting nature's balance, so we can't just focus on one type of pollution. So it's not just the air, the water, or land, because they're all connected. Pollution can start in one area, but can spread to other parts of the environment. Okay, let's look at water and land pollution. So water pollution happens when harmful substances get into the water. Major sources for water pollution include sewage, that's the wastewater that comes from homes and buildings, chemical waste from factories, and fertilizers and pesticides that wash off from farms. Pollution is getting worse every day. Just like other living things, people are also affected by pollution, leading to illnesses, birth defects, respiratory diseases, and more issues. That's why it's important for all of us to work together to reduce pollution. So you can see how in this picture it shows that area of water is polluted. You can see garbage everywhere there. Same thing here. Okay, the water is getting polluted by the fuel that's coming from the boats that's in the water there. Okay, here's an example of that happened in the Wabigoon English River system from 1962 to 1970. It was mercury poisoning. Fish, their main source of food, contained extremely high levels of mercury from toxic dumping by the Dryden Chemicals pulp and paper mill upstream. So the Dryden Chemical Company in 1962 began operating a Calai process plant, which used mercury cells to produce chemicals used for bleaching paper produced by the Dryden Pulp and Paper Company. Dryden Chemical Company discharged their effluent directly, so that's the waste, into the river system. The mill leaked about 9,000 kilograms of mercury into the English Wabigoon River system between 1962 and 70. In 1970, the high levels of contamination forced the community to stop commercial and tourist fishing. The Ontario government insisted that the poisonous fish were safe to eat, while the community increasingly showed signs of mercury poisoning. Okay, the next topic is ozone layer. So there is a layer in the atmosphere called the ozone layer. So the ozone layer blocks harmful ultraviolet light from the sun. UV rays can cause skin cancer and eye problems, and they can also harm plants and animals. Humans have a significant impact on the ozone layer and the environment. Okay, so we're talking about air pollution. We release ozone destroying chemicals like chlorine, fluorine, and hydrocarbons, or CFCs, into the atmosphere. These chemicals come from things like air conditioners, spray cans, refrigerators, and manufacturing processes. So humans can harm the planet by releasing sewage, chemicals, bacteria which can pollute land, water, or air. So pollution doesn't stay in one place, it can travel across borders, affecting other countries and damaging natural environments. Okay, next up is acid rain. So another way humans affect the atmosphere is through acid rain. Vehicles like cars, planes, and trains, along with power plants and factories, they release sulfur and nitrogen into the air. These, mixed with sunlight, water vapor, and oxygen, they create acids and other harmful chemicals, which then fall back to Earth as acid rain. So acid rain is especially harmful to plants and water-based ecosystems. So you can see here buildings and precious stone objects are weathered away as the stone reacts with the acid. You can see here these are trees, okay, that are affected by acid rain. Okay, now we can finish up the other key questions. You can do B, acid rain. Tell me what it is. Okay, and you have a more definite explanation of ozone layer there as well. Okay, up next is what is conservation? So if you think about your cupboard or your pantry, it has different kinds of food, and when you run low, you can go to the grocery store and restock, so you buy more things. But imagine if you knew that some items couldn't be replaced. You'd probably try to make them last by using them carefully. So this is called conservation, basically protecting things from running out. So Earth is like a big pantry full of resources that we need to live, as well as materials we use for modern life, like metals and fuels for energy. So everything we get from the environment is called a natural resource. Now, two main groups of natural resources are renewable resources and non-renewable resources. So renewable resources, these are resources that nature can easily replace. Examples include oxygen, water, soil, and living things. Plants produce oxygen through photosynthesis. Soil forms when rocks break down. Water is renewed through the water cycle. And living things reproduce to keep their populations going. Okay, so these are renewable resources. So solar, wave, tidal, wind, hydroelectric, geothermal. Okay, these are all renewable resources. On the other hand, we have non-renewable resources. These are not naturally replaced, at least not within a short time. So fossil fuels like oil, coal, and natural gas, as well as minerals, are non-renewable resources. Metals come from mineral ores, so imagine how different life would be without fossil fuels and metals. There was a time when people thought our supply of natural resources would never run out. Now we know that's not true. With the world's growing population, we're using, wasting, and polluting more resources than ever before. Earth's pantry has limits, so we need to use our resources carefully, because if we don't, there won't be enough left for future generations. So again, the examples, you have fossil fuels, coal, oil, natural gas, diamonds, metals, other minerals. These are examples of non-renewable resources. Okay, types of conservations. These are the wise use of our natural resources. Okay, that's why it's called conservation. Using our natural resources responsibly is called conservation. It's important to conserve all resources, including renewable ones. We just need to make sure they don't use these resources faster than they can be renewed. Okay, we'll look at air pollution. So air pollution is a big problem in most industrial areas and cities, but it spreads everywhere because it reaches all parts of the earth. Polluted air can smell unpleasant and lead to health issues like respiratory diseases, lung cancer, and allergies. It also harms trees and reduces crop growth. Cars and factories are the main sources of air pollution, so strict laws need to be made and enforced to control it. Okay, so how do we conserve? Well, one of the cheapest ways to reduce air pollution is by walking instead of driving or using public transportation. Okay, now public transportation is not available everywhere. Okay, another way is carpooling, which means sharing a car ride so that more than one person travels in the same vehicle. So for example, if you're planning on going to a volleyball game in the community hall, instead of you and your friend taking two vehicles, you might share a ride. Okay, one of you may decide who will drive or who will take their vehicle. Carpooling is also better for the environment because it lowers air pollution. It reduces carbon emissions, cuts down traffic on the roads, and lessens the need for parking spaces. Okay, water pollution and conservation. The average person drinks about 228 gallons of water each year, but drinking isn't the only way we use water. We also use it for bathing, swimming, cleaning, cooking, gardening, and boating. So water is essential for sewage treatment, industries, farming, and fish farming too. So to keep our water clean and safe to drink, we need to stop dumping waste and raw sewage into it. We can also save water by turning it off while brushing our teeth and choosing showers over baths. So a large bathtub typically holds about 40 to 50 gallons. Okay, so 228 gallons is roughly equivalent to 4 to 5 full bathtubs of water. Okay, that's why they say choosing showers over baths, or turning off the tap while soaping and brushing teeth. For soil, it takes nature between 500 to 1,000 years to create about 2.5 centimeters, that's 1 inch of topsoil. Soil can be washed away by wind and water, a process known as erosion. However, erosion can be minimized. To prevent excessive soil erosion, people need to practice soil conservation. So here are some ways you can cover the soil with plants like grass or shrubs. The roots of these plants help hold the soil together. Limit deforestation. That means because trees act as windbreaks and help stop soil from being blown away by the wind. Plant crops across the slope of a hill instead of up and down. This helps prevent soil from being washed away by water flowing down the hill, and add materials like natural fertilizers to improve the soil. Okay, wildlife conservation. All the natural plants and animals in an area are known as wildlife, which is an important part of nature. Wildlife provides us with food, clothing, and various other products, and they are also beautiful to observe. However, human activities can lead to the extinction of many wildlife species. Polluting and overhunting, along with habitat destruction from construction and mining, disrupt the balance of nature. So here are some methods for conserving wildlife. Protecting the habitats of various organisms, enforcing strict laws on hunting and fishing, setting aside refuge, parks, and other public lands for wildlife, and providing special breeding grounds for endangered species, which are organisms at risk of extinction. So forests serve as homes for many plants and animals, and they provide us with oxygen, lumber, wood pulp, medicines, and various other products. Tropical rainforests have the highest number of plant and animal species of any place on Earth, but many wildlife habitats in these forests are disappearing. Global wildlife conservation efforts aim to monitor and protect numerous animal species and their habitats worldwide. Okay, when we come back, we'll continue with forest conservation, and what you could do in the meantime is try to finish up key question 28, what is a renewable resource? So you have to give me the meaning of it first. Don't give me the examples right away. On the next line, give me 2 examples. Okay, so tell me first renewable resource means, then give me 2 examples. Key question 29, what is a non-renewable resource? Same thing, tell me what that is first, then give me 2 examples. Key question 30, what is carpooling? So tell me what that means, and how does it help reduce air pollution? Okay, and we will come back to the rest of lesson 2 tomorrow.